everyone. My name is Abigail Deneverville. I'm an author, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I wanted to talk about free time. As an author who also works a full-time job, free time is super important to me. I only have so many hours in a day, and I have priorities. I want to write, I want to read, I even want to watch TV, but for the longest time, I was not doing any of that because I was stuck scrolling on my phone and looking at social media. I used to pride myself on my ability to write and maintain a full-time job. When I got home from work, I was writing, I was reading, I was watching a show, I was doing something to engage with stories. During the pandemic, I stopped doing that. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat as me. Our attention spans were shot. We were doing everything remotely online, and we didn't have the capacity to consume stories. And that was fine during the pandemic. But once we got out of it, I just felt like I was wasting my life. I would get off of work and I would just sit there and stare at Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and just do nothing for hours. In the back of my head, I'd be thinking, I should work on my book. I should read a book. I should even finish watching that TV show. And I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. I was completely glued to my phone. And I think I've finally gotten out of that. I'm sure some people could go cold turkey quitting social media. That was not my story. But what really helped me get out of this phone addiction was actually limiting my free time. And when I say this, I don't mean that I started working more, but I do mean limit the free time that you have in such a way that you feel compelled to write. During the pandemic, obviously I had zero commitments besides my work. I might occasionally call friends, do some video chatting, but my only commitment was work, and that's the only thing that I showed up for. Things like writing, reading, my hobbies, since I didn't have a place to show up for them, I just wasn't. I would just not do them. It didn't matter what I did. Like, if I said I will work on my book today and I didn't, I would say, oh, I'll just work on it tomorrow. And would I work on it tomorrow? Probably not. Maybe, but most likely no. The first thing that I did when I wanted to break this cycle was I joined a community orchestra. And this gave me structure to one day. This was one day where I knew I don't have time to really do anything after work. I have to make supper and go to my rehearsal. So today is a day that I can look at social media or whatever guilt-free. Doing the orchestra, that was a pretty large commitment for one day. Like, it was a 2-hour rehearsal, plus it would take about half an hour to get there and back. Plus, usually I would leave with extra time so that I would have time to set up. So let's just say, all in all, it's like a 3.5 hour commitment. So that was a time where I was not checking my phone at all because I'm in the rehearsal playing the pieces and focusing on what the conductor has to say. And I was completely detached from my phone. So building in time where the phone time was absolutely impossible helped me to begin this journey. Of course, doing a thing once a week is not going to help completely, but it's a good way to start. If you find a club or a group that meets weekly, having that commitment really pushes you to following through because people depend on you, especially something like an orchestra where you're one of a few people in that section and you really need to show up. Otherwise, the others will be disappointed in you. And sometimes that's what you need. You need to be pushed into a somewhat uncomfortable situation in order to follow through. A couple of years after I joined the orchestra, I decided that I was going to take a dance class. I'd never taken dance before, but I'd always wanted to, and I just never had, and I decided now is the time. So at first, when I started taking dance, I just went to a class that was about 15 minutes away from me, so it wasn't a huge time commitment, but I still had to structure my day accordingly. I had to plan when I was going to make my dinner. I had to eat it by a certain time. I had to leave by a certain time. And that created a bit of pressure on that day. So let's say my class was at 8 p.m. and I finished work at 5. So I would tell myself, okay, I have about an hour before I should start making supper. So what am I going to do with that time? Now, at first, I was scrolling my apps and just living my life, wasting away. But over time, I took initiative and I said to myself, okay, I have 1 hour of free time. So I'm going to work on my book, or I'm going to read a book, or even I'm going to watch TV. I do think that watching TV can be valuable, especially for an author, but you have to be doing it mindfully. You can't just be sitting there half paying attention looking at Twitter. And that was something I struggled with until I really started to try to smarten up and get out of this habit. One thing about TV that also helped me was watching foreign shows because I was forced to read the subtitles. I couldn't just zone out or answer messages without pausing the show. Otherwise, I might miss something important. So that's one trick. If you're struggling with this, there's a lot of great foreign shows out there, and there's lots on Netflix or Tubi or anywhere, really. You just have to go looking. The thing about doing both of these activities is there is a lot of planning involved, not even just on the day that you're doing them, but also the days leading up to them. Like, for example, with my orchestra, I have rehearsals on Monday nights, and usually I try to make something Saturday or Sunday so that I can just reheat leftovers instead of having to completely cook from scratch. I have to factor in grocery shopping, I have to factor in meal planning, and all of these things give structure to the days that I otherwise had nothing going on besides work. The days where I would just say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Now, suddenly, I have until this time where I have to go grocery shopping. I have until this time when I have to cook. That can really help show your priorities. And having these places that you go where the phone is completely away, it's in a bag in the corner of the room, really helps to break the habit of just constantly checking your messages, constantly being involved in whatever is going on in your digital life. The biggest thing that I did, though, that really got me out of this was I started doing community theater. This was another case where the phone is away in a corner of a room and you're dialed in for an hour to 3 hours at a time, sometimes even more. And the thing with theater, especially since you're spending so much time together weekly, several times a week, anytime I went to rehearsal, I would often be engaged with people as soon as I walked in the door. Even if I got there 20 minutes early, people would be asking me how I was. They want to know what I was up to. They'd have questions about the scene that we were working on. And the phone was just completely out of sight, out of mind. And when we finished rehearsals, usually I would have to take the bus back, and there would be several of us taking the bus together. So we'd be talking while on the bus. We would not be paying attention to our phones at all. Usually I wouldn't even look at my notifications until I got home. And at that point, I would want to get ready for bed, and I just would say, the world can wait. I had to really stack my days, my weeks with stuff to do in order to tell myself the world can wait. But I think that this is important. I think it's important to have structure to your day and to build in these things that give you structure. These activities that I've always wanted to do, I've always liked doing, and I just never took chance doing them, especially as an adult. Giving myself all of these things that I had going on gave me a reason. It really made me prioritize what was important to me. Because on the days where I have rehearsal, I have to leave before a certain time. I have to make food before a certain time. I have to get groceries. I have to meal prep. And suddenly, I went from having like 6 hours of free time past work to having 1 or 2. And I would want to use that to the best of my ability. I'd want to write my book. I'd want to draw. I'd want to even watch a show. And I am fully committed while I'm doing these things. I'm not checking my phone every 5 minutes like I used to be. So I think if you want to get away from your phone, the best thing to do is join activities where having the phone is impossible. So that means stuff like joining a class, joining a community group, joining a club. I understand that there can sometimes be a financial barrier with these activities, but in that case, I would suggest contacting the organizers, seeing if something can be done about it. A lot of community groups especially want people to join. They don't want people to be barred from entry because of finances, and they will give you different options, whatever those are. Another thing you can do is just start a club with your friends, start a D&D campaign, start a book club. Do something where you're meeting weekly, the same time, the same day, every time, rain or shine, and see how that alters how you approach your creative writing and your other hobbies as well. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. This is something that has been on my mind for a long time, and I feel like I'm finally breaking free of the social media cycle. These days, even on days where I have nothing going on, I still spend a lot of my time working on my hobbies. I'm writing, I'm drawing, I'm reading. The thought of scrolling for hours on end just doesn't appeal to me anymore, and I'm really glad about that because there were so many years of my life where I would be sitting there scrolling thinking I should be doing something else, but I never could make the move. And I think to make the move, you really have to change your whole day. You can't just sit around all day and say, it'll happen today or it'll happen tomorrow. You have to really seize the opportunity to limit the time that you have and fill it with things that you really enjoy. And the writing will just come after that. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful to somebody. I am curious to hear your experiences on this topic, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.